Having worked in this market for a long time, did a lot of research, went to the board with a list of candidates, but it was very clear to us that Dave was the outstanding candidate.
How will it work in the interim given that you won't be starting until July? Can you just explain exactly how that's going to work? Your work with the team?
Well, we Super Rugby at that stage. The next step we do is put the assistants on as well. They'll be his foot soldiers through that period. We'll hopefully have them on the ground, so they'll do the foot soldiers. He'll come out at least once in the year to come out and oversee a couple of things and check directions. There are, we'll be in complete dialogue through that period, but we think we've got it covered because the Super Rugby's got a good alignment with them now. We've set up some standards that we want everyone to adhere to, so it'll work until he gets back.
So he'll come before the first test next year. That'll be enough time to get the team.
In a perfect world, it's not. It'd be better in a perfect world. We'd like it earlier, but that's not the case. We're prepared to wait. But if you have a look at the national preparation, it's limited anyway at the best. So it's considered normal these days. Then he's got him right through to the summer. I keep getting that wrong. The summer test series. So he'll get some time. That's when he starts his campaign. So, and because it's the window's moved back this year, the tests are a little later, so he'll get a little bit longer than probably predecessors had.
Some people said that would be better to have an Australian coach last. Non-Aussie was Wallabies, of course. Was that a factor in your decision? Are you worried that some people may say, why not Australian coach?
Yeah, and I think that's a really fair question, and we looked really hard at the Australian options, and there wasn't one at this level that we believed was available to come into this role. It's something that we've identified as an area that we need to spend more time focused on to grow and develop our young coaches coming through. And that's what we'll be doing, and that's one of Jono's major mandates over the next 4 years, to make sure we've got those options in place. So given we didn't have an Australian candidate, ultimately we had to find the best candidate that we could.
So Eddie Jones didn't say that he was interested in the job to you?
We had some discussions with Eddie behind the scenes, but ultimately he was contracted to England, and he had a very tight contract with England, and that ruled him out from our discussions.
Raelene, international coaches around the world, like foreigners in all sports, are the new norm. But rightly or wrongly, for some reason, maybe it's because we don't win the Bledisloe Cup very often, when it all goes wrong for the Wallabies, people fans point the finger at the Kiwi coach. Are you concerned at all, or what makes you think that he'll be successful and fans will embrace him?
He has been successful at every job he's taken on, and I think his stats that have been talked about already have proven that he has extensive success regardless of where he goes. One of the things he's very good at is building culture and making sure that he works inside a culture. He respects hugely the Wallaby culture, the history, and at the end of the day he's chosen this job. He had other options, he had other countries chasing him, but he chose this job because he sees that exciting potential in the current Wallaby squad, and particularly exciting potential about the young talent that we've got coming through out of our 18s and 20s program.
Do you think being Polynesian will help as well, given there's so many Polynesians in the Wallaby squad?
Yeah, there's no doubt that's an added factor. He's had success working in those Polynesian environments, but more importantly has had success about bringing all cultures together in a team to make them successful.
Scott, have his assistants been appointed? Talk about foot soldiers, have they been appointed yet?
Not yet, no. We're going through the process. We targeted the man at the top first. Just to add to that and how Australians will handle him, he also he's a humble man, and he plays an attractive style of rugby that I think most Australians will enjoy. And when you put all that together, there's more positives than negatives. So I think Australians will like what he stands for, and I certainly do in our negotiations and time I've spent with him.
So will Dave have any control over his assistants?
We're in dialogue about that. We'd like to get an Australian flavour there. It's important that we get that because we have an obligation to get some young coaches through our system. We've got a lot of good young coaches coming through. They're just not at the point that we need them at the pointy end now. But the next cycle, we need to have genuine contenders for this position coming through our system. So, but we've got the talent on the floor for that, and we have to take that on.
When are you hoping to have those assistants?
We haven't put a deadline on it. We're going through the process. We've just concluded this one, and we've spoken about the options available. We'd like to see that it moves quite quickly now. At least you can tell people who they're going to be reporting to. That's a big part of the process. So you know, there'll be a couple of sleepless nights and a lot of phone calls over the next couple of weeks.
Would that mainly be people coming back from overseas, or are you looking at guys in Super Rugby?
Once again, it's a fit now. We've got the man at the top and fitting people around him that fits his skill set and also his personality, so it complements. That's a perfect coaching team where you get different personalities that can add to the environment. So we're looking at that. I've been around the game a bit, so I know the people that are out there. If we can bring people back, that's good too, because that adds experience to our coaching team, and we'll be doing everything in our power to make sure that we get what we think is a quality coaching team. Our country deserves it, our team deserves it, and we want it.
Dave is a really unknown quantity. And you know him well from Scotland. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what you know about him?
Like I said, what attracted me to Dave when I first put him on in Scotland in the Glasgow job, humble guy, really humble man, who was a tracksuit coach, who gets out there, encourages skills, there's a lot of work on skill development, plays a very, very attractive way, and what you see is what you get. And I think that's where we are. That fits our dynamics. He's a hard-working coach too. He's first in and last to leave. There's really good qualities. And he's got great people skills with the players. So when you look at that, there's a lot of good boxes to tick, and we haven't even said how successful he's been. So that fits, I think, where our dynamics fit, how we want to play our rugby, how we identify ourselves. There's more positives than that, and he's a good man.
Was that the criteria? And you said a couple of times he plays attacking rugby. Was that one of the criteria you were looking for, the coach that would suit that style?
Well, I think it's more down. It's a pretty competitive landscape, sporting landscape here. I think Australians want to see Australians play attacking rugby, or a brand that is attractive. I think, but it's got to be successful. It just can't be willy-nilly. It's got to have method to it. He brings that too. I think we see ourselves as an attacking nation. So it was certainly, rugby philosophy has to be discussed. We'd be silly not to do it, not to have it as part of the discussion. So yes, it was part of the discussion.
Does he have the players to be successful? Or is it a case that we need a good coach, but also more world-class players coming through something?
Well, what they say, great players make great coaches. That helps. The fact that, look, we've identified, like you have a look at our younger age groups, we've identified what we think is the best young talent coming through the country. We've attempting to consolidate our squads now, and if you have a look at the recent signings, we've got a lot of the young group signed up for a considerable period. So if we get that right, the talent pool of which we're fishing in is what it is. We think we've got good talent. You look at the 20s, the 18s this year have been successful. We've got a good crop coming through. Add the icing on the cake, which is good coaching. There's enough talent in this country. Don't worry about that. There's good talent.
How keen are you to bring Scott Wiseman back?
Well, you've been specific. Everyone knows he's a good friend of mine. He's a good coach. He's had success where he's gone. He'd be a welcome addition.
What about Matt Taylor? Is he on the radar for defence coach?
I'd nearly say the same thing. Good mate of mine, worked with him, good skills. He's certainly on a list, both are.
Raelene, how important do you think it is that Mark's tenure is successful and brings back maybe some disillusioned Wallabies fans?
Well, that's what every fan wants, is the Wallabies to be winning. And John is on record, I'm on record, that winning the Bledisloe Cup's incredibly important. It's not just winning it, it's defending it, and it's that sustained success that we believe the structure that we've put in place and this appointment with Dave leading the Wallaby program will deliver us. And so we're excited to see, what his style and his flavour and the results that he will bring.
I think, as I said, he was pretty open about the interest in the All Blacks. How serious and correct do you see that to be in the last few weeks?
We've been in a significant fight to make sure we got his signature, and it was literally, the contract was only signed 24 hours ago, and we put our best foot forward, and he chose us. He chose this organisation and this Wallaby team because he thinks he can be successful with it.
Raelene, somewhat of a
Direct conversation with the Jones, or was it through a third party representative?
Yeah, I'm not going to go into the details of those conversations. At the end of the day, as you can understand, these things are delicate, and there was other conversations with people. But we certainly explored that avenue and made sure that that we had explored it deeply. And ultimately, Eddie was contracted with England.
Raelene, somewhat of a new era with new chairman, new Wallabies coach. What's your sort of future plans? Do you plan on being around for a long term?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, this is exciting times for us. We've now got a structure in place, particularly in high performance, but certainly there's been some other changes in other parts of the business as well that we believe will deliver success. There's no doubt the whole of Rugby Australia should not be judged on just Wallabies' success, but the reality is what we deal as it is. And so making sure we get that part of our business right is extremely important.
And Raelene, what did you learn from the Wallabies review? I might ask the question of both of you. What's that turned up about what happened? What was lacking?
Yeah, so we're in the process of finalising the review, and we'll talk about that when it's completed.
Some people said that it seems a bit knee-jerk to appoint a new coach before the review's taking place. Would you see that or not?
We're in a competitive market. Coaches, world-class coaches, don't sit around waiting for a phone call from countries. At the end of the day, the results out of the review were about making sure we could hand a new coach the details and learnings from the current campaign. And it's not just about World Cup campaigns, it's also about Olympic campaigns and World Cup campaigns for Wallaroos as they go into 2021. And we'll be taking those learnings and giving them to the new coach.
Right, what do you mean by he was the right cultural fit?
That's an important part for us. Obviously, it's not just about Rugby Australia, but it's about the team environment that he's capable of delivering, and the feedback, the consistent feedback from everyone that's played with him or anyone that's been as part of his team as an assistant coach or a CEO that's worked with him, is that he understands bringing a group of people together and making sure he involves everyone in that organisation, and that was a very important part of our consideration.
Raelene, Dave said that he's been in talks with Rugby Australia for several months now. How do those talks play out?
Yeah, so I think I said earlier, once Michael had indicated that he may not, if he didn't win the World Cup, he may not seek reappointment. We had to understand the market. We actually had to go and talk to different people and understand who we felt was a capable option. And as part of that, some of the early discussions were held with Dave. Ultimately, the final negotiations were not started and or completed until after we'd been knocked out of the Rugby World Cup, and Michael had said that he wasn't going to be seeking reappointment.
Were there any specific conditions that Dave wanted in his agreement with Rugby Australia? In terms of where this progresses to, that you negotiate?
Well, no, and even if there was, I wouldn't probably discuss them because they're confidential negotiations around someone's employment contract. But no, there was no specific conditions.
Raelene, all things considered, back at the World Cup result, new coach, all the way down to grassroots and the juniors, 80s and 20s coming through. Where would you say Rugby Australia is as a whole?
In a rebuild phase. I mean, that's the reality of it. We've had some really difficult times, and there's been lots of people working really hard, not just here at Rugby Australia, but with our super clubs, with our states and territories, our member unions. I've just spent 3 days in Darwin with NT, Rugby NT, and understanding what the volunteers and the people that love rugby are doing up there to try and grow the sport. And they're doing lots of great things and growing the opportunities not just for 15s, but in 7s and in women's rugby. So there is significant growth happening across the country. There's lots of positive stories to be told, and we need to keep telling those stories, and we also need the Wallabies to be successful. Yeah, I mean, I think we've made some really significant changes with the restructuring of our high performance, which can't be underestimated. The appointment of Scott, the involvement with the Super Rugby team signing into a high performance agreement that aligns all of our high performance plans right from 18s through into the Wallabies, making sure that we've got coaching alignment over the top of that and athletic performance. That's a very significant move forward, a platform that has never been delivered in Australian rugby's history before, and we believe that structure will deliver us success over the long term.
What about the bid overall? Where are you at with reviewing that?
That will come off the back of the review, outputs of the review. There's no rush for us to have a look at that, and it's not just about thinking what it does for Rugby Australia, it's about thinking about the changes that are happening in the wider international landscape, what other countries are doing around their rules, where competitions lands and timing of those competitions. So it's a more complex piece of work than people realise.
Scott, South Africa won the World Cup with a large proportion of their squad based overseas. Most of that cycle, do you think it shows that it can be done and it's worth reconsidering it?
Well, it shows it can be done. Is it right for us? It's something that we'll have to look at. The reality is, for the first part, we need to sign the younger players and get them to play the game that we want them to play. get them appropriately conditioned to play the game that we want to play. So our priority is to sign the younger ones for an extensive period. When in 5 or 6 years, if they've committed here, it may be a model that we wanted to take up. The reality is though, we've got a younger group of players that's going to come through that's going to help us change the landscape of Australian rugby. So for the large part, I'd like them here.
I think the other important thing is it's not just about Wallabies success, it's about Super Rugby success, and Super Rugby, takes up 5 months of the year. Every rugby fan wants to see Super Rugby teams be successful. They want their heroes playing in their Super Rugby team, so it's a bigger conversation than just Wallaby success. It's about making sure that we've got the right players playing within our Super Rugby franchises as well.
Scott, Michael Chickle was highly criticised for attacking when they play Australian rugby attacking style. You're banging on about it. What do you see as the balance?
Well, he was criticised in some aspects. He's had success here playing the same game. So it's a fickle world. He won the Super Rugby playing a very, very attractive style of rugby, and he deserves a lot of credit for what he's done in Australian rugby. He has. It's no coincidence that the sides that kick the most seem to have a bit of success, but it's just not kicking, it's judicious kicking, trying to make the game a little bit unstructured that suits us as well. So it's finding the balance between when to kick, how to kick and why to kick, and running the ball. That's the balance, because it is the great strength of our game. It's a complex game. The great weakness of our game, it's a complex game. So you put your hand in, you put your sort of history or your future in the hands of independent person, meaning the referee, quite a bit. So having a bit of field position comes in handy. So it's finding the balance. Check went out and away, and fair credit to him. That was his philosophy. He thought he wanted to play that way. And I'm all for any coach that has a philosophy that says this is what I'm going to live or die by. And it shows great courage to do it. And any given day, if you look at that England game where we give away 2 or 3 intercepts in that period, if they stick, who's to say the scoreboard doesn't go the other way? So it's a fickle world, this game of rugby. It's understanding why you're doing it, and I think somewhere in between it's a balancing act.
And Scott, on Dave Rennie and winning him over potentially the All Blacks, what do you think the clincher was?
Look, I think there was early conversations, We had conversations about his future, where he wanted to go. He obviously harboured the ambition to coach international rugby. And so expressing a desire, showing interest, I think there was loyalty to someone come knocking on his door. And that's the type of guy he is. He's humbled by the offer and he's humbled by the interest. So I'd like to think that he sees us as a platform of which can improve up that scale, because at the moment we sit as a top 8 side that on any given day can beat anyone. We've got to get consistency in our performances. I think he sees this as a good challenge, and I think he sees this as a challenge that he wants to be part of.